Well, hello. I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to try it. I've decided that I need to start sharing a little more, and I thought I'd start by learning myself. I want to start reading The Journey of the Mind to God by St. Bonaventure. You and I are going to learn about it together. I'm using this text. It was prepared by a scholar named Philotheus Boner of the Order of Friars Minor, and this is his examination of it and translation of it. The introduction. The Itinerarium, or The Journey of the Mind to God, is one of the great spiritual books of all times. In the past half century, it has been translated into English more than a half dozen times. Its greatness, however, lies not only in a certain popular appeal. Its claim to respect is found even more in its deep spiritual message and the challenge it offers to a matter-of-fact view of reality. The author of the work, St. Bonaventure, never viewed the world in a hard-nosed, factual way. A rose, for him, was always more than a rose. Or perhaps we might better say that for St. Bonaventure, a rose, while remaining a rose, tells an attentive viewer a richer story of its reality. St. Bonaventure, who lived from 1217 to 1274, a professor at the young University of Paris, followed in the spiritual footsteps of St. Francis of Assisi, who lived from 1181 to 1226. Both men saw reality far differently from most of us. Let us look at the two men. St. Bonaventure. In the Itinerarium, St. Bonaventure introduces himself as the seventh successor as minister to the followers of St. Francis. He became minister of the Franciscan order in 1257 at the age of 40. He wrote the Itinerarium. He wrote the Itinerarium 2 years later. This period was a somewhat disturbing time for the early followers of St. Francis. Already, many of them were interpreting the life of the saint and his ideal of poverty in different ways. One group, led by John of Parma, St. Bonaventure's predecessor as minister of the order, challenged the church's dedication to the poverty of Christ. This group longed for a new age, one predicted by the 12th century hermit Joachim of Flora, where the ecclesiastical foundation would be replaced by communities of more spiritual men. Pope Alexander VI saw dangers in this movement. Pope Alexander IV saw dangers in this movement. He requested that John of Parma resign as minister. Bonaventure, elected minister at the Franciscan chapter of Rome in 1257, replaced John as a more balanced and disciplined leader. Bonaventure was a respected Franciscan. Born in the town of Balneregio, between Orvieto and Viterbo, he received his early education at the Franciscan friary in his hometown. About 1234, he went to study in the preparatory school for theology. The arts faculty at the University of Paris. He entered the Franciscan order at Paris in 1243 and began his theological studies under Alexander of Hales, the most famous master of theology at Paris. Alexander had become a Franciscan shortly before Bonaventure's arrival at the university. Bonaventure also studied with two other renowned Franciscan masters, John of La Rochelle and Odo Rigaud. During his years as an advanced theology student at Paris, he lectured on the Bible from the year 1248 to 1250, and also delivered his commentary on the sentences of Peter Lombard from 1250 to 1252, a text that Alexander of Hales had made an official textbook for the more disciplined doctrinal study of theology at the university. Bonaventure continued to teach theology at Paris until his election as minister in 1257, as is witnessed by his disputed question on the mystery of the Trinity, his disputed questions on the knowledge of Christ, and the Breviloquium, all of them university works. Even while minister to the Franciscan order, he kept close links to the university. His sermons on the Ten Commandments, on the gifts of the Holy Spirit, and on the 6 days of creation, dating from the late 1260s and early 1270s, were given to University of Paris audiences. The two points suggested in the preceding paragraphs are important for the understanding of the itinerarium. First of all, St. Bonaventure's work is heavily laden with symbolic and metaphorical language. In this way, it is very close to the type of language found among the spiritual Franciscans, inspired by Joachim of Flora. Yet, Bonaventure's use of layered language has a certain discipline that rules over, guides, and enriches his symbolism and metaphors. This discipline restrains him from the extreme interpretations found among the spiritualist writers and the Franciscan brethren who followed their lead. It is this controlled balance that invigorates Bonaventure's work. It is a balance that is achieved to a great extent by his reflection on the writings of St. Augustine, and particularly by Augustine as he was understood by Bernard of Clairvaux, who lived from 1090 to 1153, and Richard of St. Victor, who died in 1173. The second point to note in reading The Journey of the Mind to God is that it has many of the markings of a university sermon. It does not provide an account of an individual's spiritual journey. It is quite technical and a rich catalog of the myriad signs that might lead those who, like Daniel the prophet and Francis of Assisi, are men of desire to the God for whom their hearts yearn. If you would want to search for the experiences that underlie and inspire Bonaventure's work, you might best find them in the Confessions of St. Augustine. Yet, in the Itinerarium of St. Bonaventure, as in Augustine's own more thematic works, such as On the Trinity or On True Religion, these experiences have been digested and are presented in terms that might serve as a general guide for others. The Itinerarium is not a work describing direct experience. It is a university guidebook and an invitation to a deeper spiritual life. It is a general portrait of how the immediate learning experiences of university students should be understood at their more lasting, deeper, and more tested levels. If we suggest that to some extent the journey of the mind to God is a refutation of spiritualist excesses, St. Bonaventure does not set himself such a task directly. Rather, he achieves this very remote goal by simple exposition and by the balance that informs the work. He does not attempt deliberately to refute spiritualist visions of St. Francis's message. He is much more positively focused, and his treatise never descends to polemics. He rather invites us to go back to Augustine's Confessions, to his on the Trinity and on True Religion, to the On Consideration of St. Bernard, to the Benjamin Mayor or Mystical Ark of Richard of St. Victor, and to the spiritual program of Brother Giles. Francis of Assisi's third follower. Each of these spiritual guides inspired the itinerarium, and it is only within this tradition that we might best discover the more balanced spirituality that informs this work and the message of St. Francis as St. Bonaventure understood him.